Welcome back. This is the World Talks here on TVP World. My name is Anna Kalczynska. This week will be very important, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said on NBC Meet the Press. We have to make a determination about whether this is an endeavor that we want to continue to be involved in, or it's time to focus on some other issues that are equally, if not more important. Mr. Rubio's remarks came a day after Donald Trump met with President Zelensky in halls of the Vatican, while both leaders were attending the funeral of Pope Francis. The high-profile meeting and subsequent comments appeared to be a change of tone. Joining us now to unpack the latest developments and what they mean for future of Ukraine on the battlefield and beyond is Teivo Teivainen, Professor of World Politics, University of Helsinki. Good morning, sir, and thank you for joining.
Good morning.
So is the timeline Rubio offered meant to pressure Russia to enter direct discussions with Ukraine towards a deal, or President Trump and his aides are considering walking away?
It could be both. I think they see walking away as a clear alternative. What exactly that implies, we don't know. Most importantly, we don't know to what extent it means stopping all military and other aid to Ukraine. At the same time, Trump wants to be seen as pressuring, at least to some extent, Russia. He's, of course, very much playing into the playbook of Vladimir Putin, but he has some internal pressure in the United States from the Republican Party that he should not seem too much as Putin's fool. So I think it's both ways. In general, everything's going more towards what Putin wants than towards what Zelensky does want. But Zelensky doesn't have as many alternatives.
Exactly. However, President Trump appears hesitant as to whether trust the Russian side in this peace negotiation process. I suggest we take a listen of President Trump asked about whether he trusts Vladimir Putin. Here's what he had to say.
I think the meeting went well. We'll see what happens over the next few days. We'll probably learn a lot. I was very disappointed that missiles were flying by Russia, but that missiles were flying. Very disappointing. We'll see how it goes. On the Iran situation, I think we're doing very well. I think a deal's going to be made there. That's going to happen. Pretty sure it's going to happen. We'll have something without having to start dropping bombs all over the place.
Trust President Putin?
Say it again.
You trust President Putin?
You know, in about 2 weeks.
So President Trump is going to be able to tell more in 2 weeks whether he trusts President Putin or not. How should we interpret Trump's comments suggesting Putin might not actually want to end the war?
I think as such, that is the case. It's possible that Putin does not want to end the war, at least under conditions that are feasible right now. Whether President Trump is speaking as he feels truthfully, or whether there's some choreographed element there in order also to appease elements within his own political party, the Republican Party, that say he's given in too much to Putin. That's something very difficult to know here. But certainly Russia is saying the proposed agreement, we don't know all the details, does not have everything it should have for Russia. But it certainly does have more for Russia than for Ukraine. Therefore, I believe Russia indeed might be willing to move forward. It's a more difficult and more tough point for Ukraine, because Ukraine would lose quite a lot, including territorially, with the agreement.
And do you think Trump's idea of using banking or secondary sanctions, as he described it in his Truth Social post, could influence Russia's behavior?
It could. The whole idea of using financial markets, banking, and frozen assets to pressure Russia is something that has been on the table for a good while now.
I'm asking that because Marco Rubio appears to be skeptical about this and any other possible sanctions.
Yes, more generally, and as we see, there are somewhat conflicting messages coming out of the United States administration. Marco Rubio has had somewhat different line from the more staunch MAGA supporters, but I do think in this whole game for President Trump, it is at least useful to refer to the possibility of banking and other sanctions towards Russia, both because he might use them, and even if not, at least to give an appearance that he's not Putin's poodle.
So I would like to come back to this famous meeting in the Vatican, in St. Peter's Cathedral. How might Zelensky's symbolic framing of this meeting, saying it was a historic, it has the potential to be historic, how might that affect Ukraine's diplomatic standing?
Well, as we know, what we know about President Trump, that kind of speak, including the words "thank you" that we heard from Zelensky, are something Trump likes to hear. So one could see that after the humiliating previous meeting between the two in the White House some months ago, Zelensky has learned his lesson or knows how to play Trump a little bit better, whether this is humiliation again or whether it can be seen as white statesmancraft is up to anyone to decide. But I think it probably helped to create better vibes between Zelensky and Trump, and that's very important for Trump, as we know.
I also heard Bernard-Henri Lévy, a French philosopher who is a staunch supporter of Ukraine, saying that by this meeting, Trump said, excuse me, to pardon me even, to Volodymyr Zelensky without saying it actually. So the very meeting was already a symbol of asking for forgiveness for this meeting in the White House. But maybe that's an overstatement. But given the Zelensky symbolic stance and also the Trump earlier critical stance towards Zelensky, what exactly might have changed in their dynamic now? What Zelensky did say to Trump, or what Trump heard or wanted to hear?
Well, we don't know. It seems from the public comments that Zelensky said he's open to most aspects of what we know of the proposal for peace, but not for territorial concessions. And he was being quite explicit about that. Then again, we know there might be a possibility that there's an agreement where some players, including Russia and United States, recognize Crimea as part of Russia, and Ukraine does not, nor Western Europe does not recognize that. And that could be some kind of compromise that some people are thinking. Much depends also on how Zelensky assesses Western European possibilities to support Ukraine in case United States walks out, not only in the negotiations, but also from any support to Ukraine. And it seems difficult that Western Europe could replace everything that the United States has offered. So it seems Zelensky is closer than before to accepting a deal that a few months ago might have seemed totally unacceptable.
So we are, of course, still waiting for the results. As Marco Rubio said, that this week is going to be very important. So important decisions ahead of us and probably more conversations ongoing. Thank you so much, Professor Teivo Teivainen, Professor of World Politics, University of Helsinki, was joining us here on World Talks.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching this edition of World Talks. But please stay tuned to TVP War for more.